So courtesy the technology, glitch, I get to speak first. First of all, a big thanks, for inviting me here and able to share my thoughts with you. Thanks to the organizers and of course our chair here, Dr. Ajay Bakshi, for giving me this opportunity. What I'm going to cover, it was a great start. Actually, we have some questions. So I'll try to cover a few, thoughts that were in your mind about technology, especially healthcare technology. Limitless, endless possibilities, but what is possible and what is happening, this is what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to link it with healthcare growth. So there is a huge amount of healthcare growth happening in India and how technology can enable that. So that's roughly what I'm going to cover in the next 20 minutes. If you have questions during I'm speaking, please raise your hands and tell me so that I can stop and answer those, or you can wait for the end of the session. Both are acceptable. Let's look at some of the trends in healthcare. Okay, so if you look at what's happening in India, there's a huge rapid growth. I see some students who are sitting here. So healthcare industry is a rapidly growing industry. It is double-digit growth, which is ahead of many other industries in India. And it's, it's the place to be in. There are changing disease patterns. There is a huge amount of lifestyle diseases which are occurring and not primitive diseases which used to happen earlier. And there is rapid and disruptive penetration of financial models, which includes insurance, other paying capacities of patients, and of course government is investing a lot of money in healthcare, and you'll get to hear more about that in a few minutes. Emerging specialty care models. We just saw HCG model being presented, a unique model which is branded. It is not known by the name of a doctor. Of course, the doctor is behind it. But then this is a specialty care, and the whole group has expanded like anything in the last 10 years. And there are many like this. This is only cancer. There is orthopedics, there is cardiac, and there are so many other models which are emerging. Acute talent crunch, both for clinicians, hospital administrators, and of course doctors, technologists, people who run equipment, and there are so many other things which are required. Huge amount of money is flowing in through private equity and other investors who want to invest in healthcare, as it is seen as a business which can generate a lot of returns. And greater government investments are possible. Government directly is investing in the new plan of the government. There's an increase in healthcare spending, and of course there is PPP projects which are happening. If you look for, let's say, one more minute, the scale of expansion. In 3 years from now, we have about 1.6 million beds in India, and these will become 2.2 million. So India will add about 600,000 hospital beds in just 3 to 4 years. And these are research data which has been published by various companies, including McKinsey and other organizations who have worked extensively in Indian healthcare industry. ICU alone, just an indicator, we have currently 200,000 ICU beds in India, and it will become 440,000 in 3 years, double. And of course, large hospital revenues today are roughly about between 16 to 17,000 crores, and these are expected to grow to 60,000 crores in 3 to 4 years. So you can imagine the scale of expansion that's going to happen. And technology can help scale these new heights. How can make it happen? So, as I mentioned, you see the beds are going to grow, the buildings are going to grow, the hospital infrastructure is going to grow. Of course, patient demands and requirements will grow. And technology or advances in medical technology is something which is such a vast subject. If you see some of the indicators, on the middle of the screen, new care models will emerge. So somebody spoke about remote care. If we want to increase access of patient care in India, remote care is the way. Our patient population cannot reach the hospitals that we have because the hospitals are too far or too expensive for those patients. These kind of new care models will emerge. Patients will choose hospitals and not go there for compulsions, and this is relevant especially for patients who want dedicated treatments or who want their own requirements to be met in services as well as in technology rather than only what is available. Wearables and remote care. Somebody spoke about wearables. If you've seen the launch of iPhone 6, it includes a watch, and limitless possibilities are there through that watch. There are wearables which are there already existing, and I'm going to show you a glimpse of a few of those. Energy efficiency and adaptive hospitals. Hospitals which have been built as a cardiac hospital need to become something else in 2 years to grow. If it is a multi-specialty hospital, they need to add dedicated care wings, as they move forward, because that's what the trends are showing. Customer relationship management tools. ERP is very common in industry. In supply chain, in companies, we use ERP without even asking any questions, but we don't use it in healthcare. There are hardly any customer relationship management modules which are existing even with major hospitals. At patients at home, patient treatment, which is always thought of in hospitals, has to shift towards home, because chronic disease can be sorted out only with care at home. And increase patient financing focus. So these are a lot of broad general areas where technology can work. And one of the key areas which I'm going to cover is actually the green line that you see, which is digital health platform. So out of these areas, I'm going to cover 3 of them. And if you follow, some of the leaders of healthcare in the world, so Bernard Tyson, who is Kaiser Permanente CEO, he believes that medical technology has changed the way they deliver care today, and it has helped them scale up, expand, and the way they work with patient and doctors has changed completely, and technology has enabled that. Working with doctors, it's not only working with patients. Doctors actually work on technology, and technology can make a huge difference when you want to attract doctors to your hospital, or when you as a CEO or hospital administrators have to give them the tools that work for them to create patient care. And similarly, of course, technology changes hugely for the patients. So the 3 things that I'm going to focus, instead of going in many directions, the 3 things that I'm going to focus are a digital health platform, and I'm going to tell you a bit of details about that. How to increase access to people for healthcare in India, and of course, how medical technology is enabling improving efficacy and efficiency. Let's look at digital health platform. Okay, so I don't need to explain this terminology. Everybody understands digital health platform is something which cuts across the various modules of care that we have. That means prevention, diagnosis, treatment, recovery, and wellness. Now, somebody from this side asked whether UID can be linked to healthcare. So population health is going to be reality, and today's advances in medical technology can do that. Just look at banks, just look at airlines. If we draw a single fabric, so for example, banking, it runs on technology. Every bank account in the world, every single bank in the world is connected to each other. So whether they are competitors or whether they are linked to each other, whether they're branches of the banking, they use IT and technology as a single fabric. Travel, single fabric. You can book anywhere from anywhere at your home. It's a single fabric which enables. So the information in healthcare exists, but it's not very usable. And we have various IT systems, for example, PACS. We have clinics for using their own IT systems. We have multiple hospital EMR. We have personal device data. What if we convert this whole thing into a digital health platform? And that means it's a personal health platform usable in your phone that you carry every day, or tabs or laptops that you use every day. And it is enabled not only by Philips. So this is, although I work for Philips, this is not a Philips talk. So it is enabled by multi-applications. Of course, Philips applications, which are already existing, and we are working very heavily on these. But in addition, combining non-Philips applications, and that could be from GE, from other companies, and then it creates a single fabric, which becomes a people-centric service platform. Personal health problems can be shared, personal health tracking can happen, and professional health tracking can happen through that. So today, you examine a patient, specialist doctors who are sitting here, you examine a patient, whether he's chronic care or in emergency care at this moment, without any track of that patient if he's new to your hospital. This will cease to exist, because before you see a patient, you will have preventive data, you will have last treatments data, and you'll have everything else that you want to look at, like allergy history and previous treatments, before you actually end up seeing a patient. And digital health platform can enable that. Imagine the first 15 minutes of your conversation with the patient actually gets finished because you already know this patient very well, because you have the data in front of you, and then you can do the professional health advice based on that data. Consumer health functionality. So if you saw the new health app which is launched by, of course, Apple 3 days back, it helps you track a lot of your own personal health vitals, which includes, of course, vital signs like your breathing rate, your exercise rate, your fitness levels, conscious levels, and things like that. And in addition to that, we plug in the other vitals that are required, and that becomes a consumer health platform. And of course, collaborate this completely on a cloud, which is accessible to everybody, anywhere, whether you are a hospital which is in Bangalore, or a hospital which is in Mysore, or a hospital which is in Delhi. And that actually means the digital health platform, and that's what will enable scaling up of healthcare access in India. It will be accessible from home. It will be accessible from hospitals, doctors, clinics, and everywhere else. What will it drive towards? It will drive to two main things: professional healthcare delivery through the use of the platform, and of course, continuous personal health tracking through the use of the same platform. Philips is working very strongly on the digital health platform, and we are working with many other companies in the world, and I think in a few months from now, this will be a reality in India as well. Let's go to the next topic that I had, which is increasing the access. So advances in medical technology, while IT and enabled services is a huge opportunity, but at the same time, there is a big gap in India on access of devices, technology, or medical equipment to so many patients who never reach a big hospital. So these could go to neighborhood clinics, these could go to nursing homes, these could go to very small hospitals. They could be located in northeast states, as one of the gentlemen told us, and they are everywhere. So technology is now allowing us to put healthcare applications on standard devices, tabs, which are available everywhere. So what you see on the screen right now, left-hand side, is a full function ECG machine, which actually is connected to a tab, and this machine used to be a several lakh rupees machine, which used to exist only in hospitals, and you have to go there to get a simple ECG test done. Now this can be at a GP's clinic, a general physician who can be in northeastern states or anywhere else, doing a full function ECG, which has interpretation capabilities and others. On the right hand side, you see a tab-based ultrasound machine, which is again a single probe ultrasound, and can reside with physicians or with clinics which are in remote areas, and allowing access to patients. What you see at the bottom is home healthcare, oxygen concentration. People used to get admitted to hospitals to treat asthma or COPD, not required at all today, because we do home care services, and that is basically equipment which are carried into home. You are seeing one side oxygen treatment, and on the other side sleep treatment happening to a patient who's very much at his own home with his friends, family, and relatives. You see the wearable at the bottom. So this is a wearable, which is a reality. It's a product. It's not a picture out of fiction movies. It's a small device which is just like a watch, and it is right now monitoring the pulse oximetry level of this patient. It can attach more wires, so it can do ECG if you put it on your chest with 3 leads. It of course can do non-invasive blood pressure if you attach a cuff to it. And so basically what you're doing is, through a wearable, you're taking vital signs which used to be available to you only when you get admitted to an ICU of a hospital. So medical technology today allows you to actually connect this device to a tab and then send this data to a hospital, And that means you're not going to the hospital anymore for getting your blood pressure, ECG, or pulse oximetry level checked. They are already with you, and you can track them yourselves. And then if there are arrhythmias or alerts which are generated by the device, then you go to the hospital for further treatments. What is it enabling? These devices are enabling primary and secondary care access. So tertiary 3, which is tier, high-level hospitals, of course, has all this technology and devices. But we are enabling, primary and secondary care. You see simple clinics, doctors, population health being done here using these small devices where they can monitor, patients and send them to hospitals or clinics for further treatment. Hospital to home. There's a big drive towards home treatments, chronic diseases. Obviously, if we keep chronic care patients in hospitals, there'll be no bed left for emergency care. So these devices help chronic care patients to be monitored at home and be connected to the hospital all the time, always. They could be seniors who cannot even monitor themselves, but there are devices who can keep a tab on these seniors and alert the hospital staff when there is an issue happening, with them. Last of my points, which is improving the efficacy and efficiency. So today, technology is allowing efficiency and efficacy to be improved multiple times. What you see here is 4-dimensional, 3-dimensional views of images which have been acquired by standard equipment, post-processed on portals, which may be thousands of kilometers outside the hospital, seen by expert doctors, and then treated, diagnosed, and cut into several slices and seen how they are diagnosed better so that treatment advices can be given. Hub and spoke model on critical care delivery. So northeastern states or remote villages of Karnataka can be connected to a command center. This is reality. This is working in India. It is not something which will come. We have command centers which are already existing in Chennai, in Delhi, in Hyderabad. And you see at the top there is a command center which is connected to hospitals, nursing homes, or places which are remote. And this is how that technology is enabled. There is a command center which you see at the top, which is monitoring the patient through audio video, through vital signs, through a connectivity which is broadband. And there is a cart, a camera cart at the bottom, which is taking all the vital signs of the patient at a remote hospital, which could be several hundred kilometers away from the command center, and sending all this data back to command center, where a senior intensivist or a critical care physician is actually monitoring all these information and giving advices to those satellite centers to treat the patient better. And this is reality. Some of the other views, so supporting acute care. There could be acute care physicians who are sitting not at the hospital where you're treating, but somewhere else, and you need consultancy, and technology is allowing that. Reducing medical errors by charting better, or by seeing that we get the information at the right time, and then we compare it with other treatments done, and that's how improving the efficacy. Of course, lowering readmission rates. I spoke about chronic care, and there are a lot of models of technology, a few of which I showed you, which are enabling chronic care to be done at home, so that patients don't have to get readmitted to hospitals. COPD patients, for example, on an average admit 4 times in a year into a hospital, but home healthcare equipment technology models don't need their admission at all unless they develop a chronic ailment during the course of the treatment. A few other views, last ones from my side. Electronic charting, for example. You may have seen, if you're doctors who have served in physician areas, huge charts, flow sheets to track patient vital signs. All these are now possible through tabs, automatically acquired, reducing manual work of nurses by more than 70%. So they take care of the patients rather than taking care of writing down the numbers from the devices all across. And of course, auto charting helps efficiency and efficacy extremely by basically standardizing protocols across standards. If you want to treat sepsis, the system will guide you how to treat sepsis in the ICU. If you want to treat any other ailment or a chest pain, and through the entire hospital process, the chest pain treatment will get guided through the systems. High-end visualization of arteries or stents which are implanted using imaging modalities which have transformed into high resolution image visualization by digitizing the whole imaging sequence from acquisition to actually display, and that's how you get high-end visualization. Patient-friendly therapy suites. So by combining, we saw a lot of healthcare, but by combining lighting, audio, video, music, and of course ambient solutions, you can convert your therapy suites into very patient-friendly environments. These could be your OTs, these could be your MRI suites, or these could be really areas where children come and they really feel at home, which improves the efficiency and efficacy of the whole process. Just to summarize, because I'll just recap for you what I covered. So while advances in medical technology are huge, we can talk about genomics, we can talk about molecular imaging, we can talk about a lot of areas where research is happening. But what is available today for us, where we have come across the world and of course in India, are 2 or 3 main things in my mind where it can make a huge difference to healthcare for us and take us to the level that we want to achieve in the next few years. One is the digital health platform, which is basically having a single fiber connecting everything in healthcare and recognizing any patient anywhere through this fabric. Of course, increasing access of healthcare to patients in remote areas through technologies like eICU, tab-based devices, which is ECG and ultrasound that you saw, which are very small and they can run on tabs, and of course using wearable devices that you saw. And of course by using high-end technologies which improve efficiency and efficacy of the standard modalities that you have. There is a new wave of a lot of hospital construction, hospital buildings, hospital infrastructure which is being created using new technologies, and this could be prefab buildings, energy efficiency acquisition through LEDs, using solar positioning and stuff like that, which is happening. So these are the 3 or 4 things which are key enablers, which the advances in medical technology can help scaling up healthcare in India. That's it from my side. Thank you so much. Questions from your side?
And I'll now invite Mr. Teddy Bressenheim to please come and talk about health technology and innovation.
So while they're setting up, I'll just, I think the questions were great, and in fact, very forward-thinking, because in the end, the ability for patients to be more participatory, I can't speak this morning, in their own health decisions, I think is a global phenomenon. And as one was mentioning, the idea of sensors, the combination of devices that we all have in our hands today or in our pocketbooks today, those are obviously very intelligent devices, and every year obviously continue to expand their capabilities. And in fact, if you look at a lot of the technology now in smartphones, they are even further ahead than where we were with laptops, let's say 15 years ago. So we do see this intersection or nexus, if you will, between telecommunications, the intelligence in a handset or a smartphone or tablet, and the use of that in the medical caregiving scenarios. A lot of investments going on globally, low-cost sensors, the telecommunications capabilities, the transmission of audio and visual, and in large measure the combinations of genomics, proteomics, as well as monitoring sensors. All of those are going to play a much more substantial role as we see in the future. It is no surprise that companies like Apple and Google and Samsung and others are obviously going to blur the lines between consumer-driven activities and healthcare delivery activities. So with that in mind, let me just get started here on the presentation. You know, there is a lot of technology around us and ever increasing amounts of information. But when we look at the scenario in India, as well as many other emerging areas of the world, we are very excited because in India we have a very unique healthcare system, one that is already very cost-effective, although one that obviously needs a far more expansive impact if we're going to serve the majority of the population. And we're very excited by the fact that as a company we've been here for a long time, but it's one that we now see the future relies heavily on us powering innovation to meet the needs of India, which will indeed help serve the interests and the needs of the world. Okay, voila, we have a slide. So I'm going to touch on, I think, some of the things that that was just mentioned, but also about the idea that as a country we should have the ability to be developing a lot of the needs that we have and the relevant solutions that we would need in order to sustain a cost-effective, high-quality healthcare system. And it really is, I think, it's something that is not too aspirational. We have a large, population of gifted engineering talent in the country. We certainly have a lot of need, and we have a spirit, I think, of jugaad engineering or ability to engineer on a very limited resourced environment. So I think that is really a longer term goal, but one that we're certainly interested in trying to participate. And even longer reaching, I think, India, much like we have in the pharmaceutical industry, is to be a med tech or medical device net exporter to the world. And I think that is really a possibility and a path that we're trying to be on. Because it is certainly not just unique to India that there's a need for affordable, high-quality, sustainable healthcare systems. In the estimation, it's 4.5 billion people in the world who have little to no access to healthcare, and a large disease burden, and one that continues to expand as the population ages. As well as a lot of great effort that's been done around the world, both by countries, NGOs, and companies, to reduce the burden of communicable diseases. And as a result, people live longer, but as we live longer, we clearly incur more of the lifestyle diseases, and we're seeing that certainly here in India. Also, as most of our healthcare systems would rightly point out, is we do have a lack of skilled resources. From physicians on down. And I think another, what I would compliment the government on is the National Healthcare Sectors Council and the whole national skills development effort. I think it's one of the most efficiently run government organizations, and something that I think will be a very strong contributor. And I'll touch a little bit on the efforts that we see from our company on that as well. And then lastly, around the infrastructure, clearly the most expensive part of healthcare is the land and the building and the capital equipment. And unless we have mechanisms to address that, we'll certainly be stymied in terms of expansion. In all of the countries that you could look at in post-mortem analysis of what systems have worked best, when the government is a payer, when the government is a provider, or when the government is both payer and provider, which we do have examples of that. And again, India sounds very unique in that the private sector is largely participating to expand the infrastructure of healthcare. And I think the government is weighing out this idea for which private partnerships with public is probably the best suited answer, and certainly one that will extend the government's dollars to expand healthcare infrastructure. Where we look at those systems, and there's been some great analyses by McKinsey as well as Price Waterhouse, is long-term quality and costs are best served through the government being a payer and not a provider. We're a company that is involved in, has been involved in many years in healthcare. It's a strong core competency for our company. It's a large component of our revenues as well as investment strategies. And we want to continue to look at that and again, in the context of the 4.5 billion people that are left unserved or underserved. So I'm going to touch along the lines of the affordable technologies. It's the most exciting part, I believe, as far as the technology innovations. And as an engineer myself, while we all as engineers like to be involved in the latest, greatest, cutting edge, fancy technologies, at the end of the day, I think this is even more exciting, and we're seeing that as we do more innovation in the area of affordable technologies. Our engineering community is standing in line trying to get into these programs because they're more disruptive, they serve a greater public purpose, and I think they can be as novel and as exciting and as patentable, in fact, as we have at the high end. Here in Bangalore, we have our largest center of R&D. We have 1,600 engineers and scientists. We've been here for more than 25 years. In fact, we're the largest domestic medical technology company in terms of both development as well as manufacturing. But being big isn't necessarily important unless you're actually doing something that's relevant to the needs of the citizens in India, and that's really the biggest effort now, is to focus on that, and not to do it solely. But we're actually very excited by the collaborations with the academic centers, with the provider community, and as well with the government. And we're building this Center of Affordable Care for GE in Bangalore, which is to serve the world. You want to compare, I think it's important to recognize while we don't have the right cost structure to serve the population of India, it does stand as the world's most affordable healthcare system. So we do need to think through the economic factors that come into healthcare, because we don't want to throw, as they say, the baby out with the bathwater. If we put too much constraints on the private system, if you look at the revenues and the profits that are made in the private sector, they are largely being plowed back in to advance the expansion of healthcare, to improve the technology, to prove outcomes. So I think we need to look at that and make sure that we are incentivizing in the right ways, clearly, making sure it's done with integrity and transparency. But there is a lot of merit if you want to compare the system in India to other systems around the world. And as you see here, and these are averages, so forgive me for the averaging of data, but even against China, which is another large population, a large rural population, the cost to get things done in India from the patient standpoint or the payer standpoint is still a very large margin, substantially lower than most other or any other place in the world. And as I said, the other constraints on our system besides just affordable technology is the availability of skilled resources, the ability to have cost of capital at a reasonable rate, and then the investment and the whole ecosystem that goes with that. So to borrow a phrase from "If necessity is the mother of invention," I think we now look at constraint as the mother of disruptive innovation. And when we look at that, it's causing us to think very differently about the way, it's not just taking something that we already know how to do, like a CT scanner or an MR scanner or a respiratory system, and find ways to make it lower cost. It's literally looking at things from the ground up and thinking about what is the most necessary piece and how do we innovate around that? How do we change our entire paradigm, in fact, of how we innovate? No differently than I would contend, as a provider of healthcare services, you have to do some of the same. So we have this new methodology which we're using that is, I call it somewhat the magic of science and empathy. Empathy for the conditions that patients have to be in, as well as the healthcare system has to deliver in. We all have our own concerns and issues with power and cleanliness and things that are also challenging for this. But the idea is to extend the healthcare reach and do that with both the cost effectiveness that we talk about, but without compromise the quality of the outcome for a patient. We have a design lab in Bangalore that I hope at some point, if anyone's interested, you're welcome to come. It's a very interactive virtual environment. We test a lot of concepts now ahead of the actual implementation of those. And with that, we're learning again how a patient interacts with this equipment, how a physician in their own environment or a nurse in their own environment or in a village, and how those things have to be modified against the standards that we were more accustomed to. So we've had a lot of opportunity to play around, if you will, with ideas and technology and bringing other people as part of this. We've got great relationships with the academic centers as well as with some of the NGO community, and we're really now pressuring ourselves to think about these things in a very different way and using some of the newer technologies like 3D printing to actually build something very quickly, put it in the hands of someone and see if that indeed meets the needs. Just a very simple example, but you look at baby warming, or one of the primary reasons that we lose so many babies in the first 24 hours is just thermal regulation. And when we look at that, it's not to take the high-end standard that we would find at the premier institutions around the country, but it's to look at what the alternative is. It's sunlight, a baby's being pressed against the mother, or a light bulb. And infants treated with, say, a light bulb, that's our comparable. It's how do we compete with the cost structure and the implementation of a light bulb. Or the compromise, which is some of the centers which have, in resource constraints environment, have very limited capabilities, but they have kind of made things on their own to try to fulfill this. But as a result of this, it's obviously not a very sufficient answer and still a tremendous amount of burden. So we made a system, and we worked with ASHA workers, we worked with NGO communities to come up with a solution that would be less than 35,000 lap, or 35,000 INR. And when we did that, we looked at the quality of warming, but we looked at what else has to happen in that environment. Why do ones that say, you know, under the great efforts of the World Bank, let's say, someone's donated a set of baby warmers, but you can go back in a few years later and they may be sitting in the corner because the cable's broken or because the heating element is not working anymore. So we looked at and addressed those things. So as a result of that, we have thought through components within the system designed for clinical outcome, but also designed for low cost to operate and a resiliency to last a much longer period of time so that more babies would be served or more patients would be served. And this is an example. We put Kevlar in the cable as an example so that it couldn't be broken. We made the bassinet warm out to the edges because even though we're concerned about infections, a lot of resource-constrained places would put more than one baby into the bassinet. We made the mattress without any seams, so again, from an infection control, it could be sterilized much more simply. Those are the kind of simple ideas which sound, as I say them, obviously so intuitive, but when you look at the prior designs from any company, none of these things had been factored in. Cardiovascular disease is another keen area for all of us, and I know that a lot of innovation has gone into trying to care for patients, but ultrasound is an example, and I think was mentioned as well. We have to make ultrasound more readily accessible for patients. It's the most low-cost, portable, non-radiating, and most comprehensive view, if you will, from a non-invasive standpoint of assessing a person's heart condition. And that, along with ECG, you package these up so they can transmit to the cloud, they can be read by an expert elsewhere, and we can have a better outcome for someone in finding their disease earlier and making sure that they're not overtreated. The other types of recent examples designed here in India was mentioned at EICU. I think that's a fantastic platform. We wholeheartedly support that. I think the idea that we can connect patients as though we have virtually transferred them to, you know, the centers like Manipal or here, where we have the extension of the expertise which is in limited supply, as well as the comprehensive collection of data and be better at patient management individually, but also as in a population. We've got a lot more newer technologies that we've worked on. This is a picture of our CEO looking at the new low-cost CT scanner that we're about to launch here, and that is, again, a 40% amount of cost has been taken out of the system to own it and to operate it. And then, of course, in our life sciences business, we haven't forgotten that it's still important to be sure we can bring down the cost of drugs and vaccines, and that's another area. We designed a low-cost chromatography system, again, to meet the needs of a new academic, if you will, in the AIMS, say, setting, or across the country in terms of our biotechnologies. And when we planned this, we thought there was about 250 labs around India that would need something like this. We launched the product in May. It sold more than 1,000, and the largest buyer as a country has been Japan. So it's another testament that we can design in India, we can manufacture in India, and we can sell to the rest of the world and create an export economy for this country, as well as solve for the problems that we have as a healthcare system. We're doing a lot in the terms of the educational component as well. We're launching schools around the country to train radiology technicians. Again, something that is close to the business that we serve, but I think very important to change the outcomes, not just for healthcare, but for generations of rural people, especially the girl community in the rural settings, who, if we can give them a good job, they'll lead to a better life for themselves and their family. The last piece I'm going to leave you with is another mission that we're on as a company is not just to solve for here and now and today, but to inspire that next generation of engineer in this country to be part of the healthcare community. Too many of their engineers go into the IT sector, the BPO sector, and I look around and I see just how wonderful the opportunity would be to connect them to our healthcare system. And so we have been doing a tremendous amount of community efforts as well as sponsoring engineering talent to come into the healthcare system. Because I think in the next 10 or 15 years, we can have a whole revolution of innovation that's coming out of India that serves the world. So with that, I'll leave you with the video that we took recently. We sponsored a hackathon on our Jack Welch Technology Campus, and we had more than 700 people come and register, ASHA workers, physicians, and engineers, and startup companies. So with that, I think we'll try it once from here, and if it doesn't work, do we have the audio plugged in? Just try it. Okay, let me try it somewhere. Where's the, yeah, I have the. I had it on the stick, did it? No, the video was on the,
कंट्रोल होठों को करके गोल होठों को करके गोल सीटी पर जाके बोल लाइफ हो आउट ऑफ कंट्रोल होठों को करके गोल होठों को करके गोल सीटी पर जाके बोल मुर्गी क्या जाने अंडे का क्या होगा अरे लाइफ मिलेगी या तवे पे फ्राई होगा कोई न जाने अपना फ्यूचर क्या होगा होठ घुमा सीढ़ी बजा के बोल भैया all is well अरे भैया all is well अरे साचू all is well अरे भैया all is
Thank you, Terry. With that, I'd like to invite the third speaker, Dr. Sharma. We have another 20 minutes, and then we'll open the floor for another 10 minutes of questions. Thank you.
Dignitaries on the dais and in the audience, students. I know how it feels like being in the last talk of the last session. So what I will do, momentum is mass into velocity, and I come with a very small body mass. So I will increase the velocity of slides so that we finish on time and the momentum generated is as good as equal to the previous talk. So, but for me to do that, and there were many questions that were asked before our session started. To answer those questions in one answer, there is a very small story which I have repeated once, and with your permission I would repeat it. What happened was, there was a son of a very rich man in Arab who was studying in America. And this boy used to come to his college every day in his gold-plated Rolls-Royce, right? And one day he wrote an email to his father that, "Dad, I come in gold-plated Rolls-Royce, all my classmates come in local train, I feel very embarrassed." So his father replies back, "Son, please don't embarrass me with such emails. 10,000 million euros have been deposited in your bank account, go ahead and buy a train as well." Right? Now, that is what happens with technology. Just when you have a problem with a local train, you are sold a Rolls-Royce, and when you have a problem with the Rolls-Royce, we are sold the train itself. this subject is about how to understand what exactly we need. Do we need a seat in a local train? Do we need a Rolls Royce, or do we need the whole train? And one of the points that I take forward from the previous speaker when she showed Jugadathon, it's a very innovative concept. It's led by something called CAMTech, Consortium of Medical Technology Providers, in which GE is also a partner. We ourselves go and pick up many innovations from Jugadathon, just like we did when it happened a month ago. So coming back to health technology assessment, one slide is on the global perspective of what this science is and why it is necessary for you and me to know what this is. World Health Organization has passed a resolution that healthcare systems and nations would understand, support and propagate something called health technology assessment. I will skip the slide because I have given my presentation to the organizers and they would share it with you. I will straight away come to the institutional perspectives of health technology assessment. And there are 5 simple questions that we ask ourselves. One is evidence based on marketing or clinical results? And the person on the first speaker in the marketing session, who very nicely pointed out the difference between having an outcome or just having yet another machine is very important. I visited a hospital in South India who bought a robotic surgery equipment not because they needed it, because they wanted to compete with the neighboring hospital where patients had started flowing in. Now, if that is the goal, then this science has limitations. But if the goal is outcome, we really need to know what we need. The problem is, clinical results come out of studies, and studies themselves could be biased. So what do we do? So you may have one study saying that this works, another study saying that it doesn't work, third study saying that it works partially. Which one do you believe? The second question is, are those varied clinical results summarized? The third, are the studies free from bias? Fourth, are we looking at cost effectiveness or mere price difference? And I will come to explain what this is in subsequent slides. And fifth, which is also most important, is safety of patients and staff using the technology. Now, what we do to measure clinical effectiveness, and whereas hospital administrators and decision makers we need to understand, is clinical effectiveness is an assessment of entire clinical literature, trial data, and undertaking a robust systematic review. This itself is a complex methodology. Cost effectiveness need not be always in price. It could be in cost per death averted, it could be cost per daily saved, it could have numerous representations. Legal, ethical, regulatory aspects related to technology and how that technology is integrated in our hospitals or health systems. So I'll come to these components one by one, but to do that, I have taken 4 examples, 2 from public health system and 2 from hospitals, using which I would like to show how we conclude such assessments and what is the importance of conducting such assessments. So if you see this vehicle, this is a mobile eye surgical unit. Mobile camp-based cataract surgery is banned in India. Still this model has been given permission. This was part of our regulatory assessment of the technology. The chart there shows that almost 7.5 crore people will need cataract surgeries by 2020 and 6.5 by 2015, whereas infrastructure is not sufficient to give them. Since cataract surgery is a well-established surgery in itself, we didn't want to review the effectiveness of a cataract surgery, so we straight away went to clinical cost effectiveness. Now this cataract surgery, when we calculate the cost, it comes out to be very expensive. But if you look at cost per daily averted, it is much better than even providing ARV therapy or HPV therapy or treating lower respiratory tract infections or even breast cancer screening. So when we pick up technologies, we don't pick technologies on prices. We pick technologies on its value, because budgets are limited and you need to make evidence-based selections. Such tables and comparisons tell us where the budget should go. Second technology, This is a non-pneumatic anti-shock garment for postpartum hemorrhage. It's a neoprene-based material coming out of one of the Jugadathons. It goes around the limbs after childbirth. There is a pressure created in the lower abdomen, and the blood is radiated towards head and the heart, causing less bleeding. Now, in the clinical effectiveness, what we do is that there are large number of studies, each with a different outcome. We meta-analyze them to show what is the net outcome. Is it positive at all or is it negative? Because we know if today we buy 1.5 Tesla MRI, in 1 year somebody will tell me that I am having junk in my hospital, we need 3 Tesla. And the day we have 3 Tesla, we would be told we need 8 Tesla or 6 Tesla. Where do we stop? What is the evidence? Do we really need? If yes, why? Such systematic review and meta-analysis tells us what is the summarized evidence globally. And in case of this technology, we could see the summarized evidence is 0.41, which shows that 59% mortality is reduced if this technology is used. Third example, we all know the white cane that visually challenged uses. This is a technology which is a white cane, but a vibrator is mounted on the cane which vibrates. Hence, it does not give obstruction just mere from the ground. It also gives obstruction if something is coming in front. Clinically very effective. We saw that the cost is 10 times higher, the MRP, 10 times higher. But if you do the cost effectiveness work, you would realize that it is twice more cost effective, although it is 10 times more expensive. Because per rupee we spend, in per unit, decline in collagen index is much higher value, double the value. I come to fourth technology which was mentioned by the esteemed speaker from Philips. We all know oxygen concentrators exist. We all spend invest money on oxygen pipeline. Are they same? Is one better than the other? Is one more cost effective than another? We did a meta-analysis of outcomes of oxygen concentrator and oxygen pipeline, and we are in dire scarcity of oxygen pipeline systems across the country. If pipelines are there, supply is not there. If supply is there, pipelines are not there. There is something missing always. But oxygen concentrators, if you look at summarized evidence, they not only prevent infection, they not only provide timely care, they also save 8 rupees per bed per day. If you look at the volume of a hospital and the number of beds it has, over a year, it means a lot. So what we do is that we generate scientific evidence, because there are two segments of advice. One segment of advice would be a consultant floating in the market who would perhaps guide you with his experience but would lack evidence. And there is a very nice terminology we use for consultant. We say a consultant is a person who takes all the information that you know, converts them into words that you don't understand and gives them back to you. But our ability to self-generate and self-assess the evidence available around the technology is fairly limited. So what we do, we not only generate such evidences for the hospitals and health systems, we also build capacity helping you to do it by yourself. I'll come to home dialysis system. 220,000 patients going into end-stage renal disease every year in the country. We have only 55,000 dialysis beds in the country. And the total, you can see in the lower paragraph, the total demand is about 3.43 crore dialysis cycles per year, and we are supplying only 1.56 crores. We are 52% short. And such assessments not only guides hospitals, they also guide industry, because now the industry knows they have a space and there is evidence around that space. And because of decline in infection by using home dialysis systems, mortality is 0.65, which means 35% lesser than what could happen in a hospital. So I would come to the end of my slides. Every 6 months we conduct a health technology assessment fellowship program at IIT Chennai or in Delhi with the Ministry of Health. which is jointly provided by the World Health Organization, the Indian Institute of Technology and Ministry of Health. Till now, about 250 to 300 people have been trained, which includes hospital administrators from top hospitals such as Jaslok, Breach Candy, Max. I would urge you to make use of such avenues where competency to assess and generate evidence is built into hospital administrators' table. What we have done is these four, but we found that this is not sufficient. And a large number of industry and hospitals come to us saying that, can you assess this technology? Now, we are a federally central government funded institute and we cannot cater to the needs of the industry. So what we have done, an academic institution like AHA has taken the pioneering role to establish a Center for Health Technology Assessment within HTA, having scientifically trained staff to conduct assessments. If there are areas in technology which mesmerizes you, which confuses you, reach out to AHA, such as how many times you should use an endoscope, should you use a fogger or a fumigator, all those standard questions that are built into purchase agreements, because purchase agreements tend to be swayed because of market. But if you need clinical and cost evidence around that, please reach out to AHA. There is also an organization called INATA, which is International Network of Agencies for Health Technology Assessment. India has recently become a member of that. We are 54th country to join. Health technology assessments conducted by all the 54 agencies are listed on their website. So if you are buying a technology or thinking to buy a technology and you need evidence around it, you could go to this website and you would find resources. If you don't find, AHA is your resource. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.